It's a very scary situation. I didn't say that. Who's talking?
Sorry, we have gone past 10 o'clock, but we're having a few technical difficulties here.
Should we try the HDMI 1?
Which has a familiar ring to it. There's all kinds of technical conversations going on next to me.
Is the
Yeah,
HDMI 1 cable available?
so I've got one of them on my telly. I know when things aren't working. It looks as though we've got there. That screen is showing what it should do. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah, that's still to come, Brian, that particular joy. Yeah, I should think so. Yeah, yeah, it is showing the top of my head at the moment. I seem to be grey on this screen.
On Skype?
Yeah. No, you're all right, Peter. You've missed the technical difficulties stage of the meeting. I'll just say there's no fire alarm drill expected today, so if the fire alarm sounds, please do leave the building through the nearest fire exit by following the running man signs above the doors and make your way to the rear of the car park. And the organiser of the meeting, that's Wendy over there, will tell you when it's safe to return. Toilets are available in the stairwell of the building at each floor landing, and water is available from the water cooler in reception. And finally, could you make sure all phones are either muted or switched off? Okay. Are we good to go? I'll make a start, as we've got a few minutes. Right, good morning and welcome to this Planning Committee meeting on Tuesday, the 22nd of October 2024. I'm the Chair, Councillor Ollie Davey. To my right is the Vice Chair, Councillor Matt Hall. And supporting officers present today are Wendy Ormsby, Development Manager, Damien. Damien Hunter, Planning Solicitor.
He's on his way, but he's running late. There was a crash on his way, so he's at a standstill at the moment. He wasn't in a crash, but there was a crash.
Right. Okay. And Wendy Harris, Democratic Services Officer. Presenting officers for today's applications, Principal Planning Officer Gareth Stevenson, Senior Planning Officer Liam Fisher, Senior Development Control Officer Lynn Schwen, and Senior Planning Officer Paul, says Golding here, isn't it Gosling?
No, Golding.
It is Golding. Oh, I get them mixed up. Righto. So the meeting today is being streamed live to the Council's YouTube account. So can I remind all members and officers making a contribution to the meeting to use a microphone or your comments will not be heard. And we'll now start the meeting by doing a roll call of committee members and declarations of interest. Over to you, Wendy.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll start with yourself, Councillor Davey.
I am present, and on behalf of all of the committee, I'll just state that I've had a lobbying email from Greendale, and I think probably you all have, putting forward the case for the retention of the NHS vaccination centre, which we shall come to later. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Vice Chair, Councillor Matt Hall. The other side.
Present and no other declarations.
Thank you. Councillor Brian Bailey.
Present, Wendy.
Thank you. Councillor Barlow.
Present, Wendy, and no other declarations.
Thank you. Councillor Bloxham.
Present, Wendy, no declarations, but agenda item 11, I won't take part in the debate or vote because I didn't attend the site visit. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Colin Brown.
Present, no declarations.
Councillor Jenny Brown.
Present, no declarations.
Thank you. Councillor Chamberlain.
Present, no other declarations, apart from I didn't attend the site visit either.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman, have we got, no? Councillor Faithful.
Present, no declarations of interest.
Councillor Gazzard.
Present and no declarations. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you. Councillor Haggerty.
Present and no declarations. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you. Councillor Anne Hall.
Present and no declarations, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smith will be joining us this afternoon. and hopefully Councillor Ragg will be joining us too. So back to you, Chair. Oh, sorry, I can see that we've got Councillor Roy Collins. Do you have any declarations, Councillor Collins? No. Lovely. Back to you, Chair.
Okay, so agenda item 1 is registered speakers, and the speakers for today's planning applications can be found on page 4 and 5 of the agenda. Agenda item 2 is minutes of the previous meeting, which can be found on pages 6 to 8. Is it members' wish that as chair I sign the minutes of the meeting held on 24th of September 2024 as a true and accurate record? All in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Steve, probably because you weren't here, Steve. Yeah. Okay, thank you. I shall do that. Okay, and we can move on to agenda item 3, which is apologies.
Just one apology from Councillor Mike Howell.
Okay, and Councillor Ragg for this morning, please.
Yes,
Yeah,
okay, thank you.
Possibly this afternoon as well. It was all in the lap of the gods, I think.
Thank you, Anne.
Okay. Jenny.
Maddie Chapman's apologies for this morning, but she should be coming this afternoon.
Oh, right. Thank you. Any more? No. Good. Agenda item 4, we've done declarations of interest. Matters of urgency, there are none. Agenda item 6, to agree any items to be dealt with after the public have been excluded. There are none of those. Agenda item 7, planning appeal statistics. We have an update from Wendy Ormsby, Development Manager.
Good morning. So, as I say, the appeals list, the things to point out, in fact, just to clarify, because I was asked earlier this morning, the new appeal lodged, the first one on the list, land at Pound Farm, Hawkchurch, for battery energy storage, is a different site. Members will recall there was a scheme that was refused at committee and that went to appeal and has actually been determined that was allowed at appeal. This is a different site in the vicinity of the previous site, but a different scheme, and that one was refused under delegated powers. And further to that, looking at the decided appeals, the one that members may just note purely because it was one that came to committee, which was the application to site of Spiller's Cottage, shoot, so reference 221377. That was a officer recommendation to refused by committee, and that was for a temporary, effectively a retrospective application to retain a dwelling on site whilst a permitted one was under construction, and that was allowed by the inspector, who took the view that because there was effectively a dwelling already approved on the site, there's going to be no additional occupancy, and that the landscape harm was not sufficient to sustain the refusal, so that one was allowed. The other ones, I think, are relatively self-explanatory in terms of the commentary, but do let me know if you've got any questions about any of the others. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Hall, I think, was first. Yeah, you had a question.
Thank you, Chair. Just clarity of information. The Hawkchurch Best scheme, which went to appeal, I thought was dismissed. But you said it was accepted.
You're quite right. Yes, it was dismissed at appeal, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Gazzard.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question to Wendy. On page 17, is it possible that
Do you know when the appeal is going to be heard for number 18 Colleton Way, Exmouth? I've got an interest, obviously, because it's in my ward, so I don't know whether you've received a date when that appeal will be heard.
So very sorry, I was a bit distracted. Which one is it? Sorry,
It's page 17, and it's, sorry, bear with me. It's the top of the page, 23/1472/4, number 18 Colleton Way, Exmouth.
No, unfortunately, so it's a written reps appeal, and unfortunately, it's very hit and miss at the moment with the planning inspectorate in terms of how long they take to determine. Some come through reasonably quickly, others, for reasons unknown to us, do take some time. So unfortunately, I can't give you any assistance with that.
Thank you. Councillor Barlow.
Thank you, Chair. On page 14, top of the page, Hillbarton Business Park, 220686. I believe we've had that back now. I probably wasn't in time for the report, but obviously that might have relevance to what we'll be talking about later today. I just wondered if there was any, you could give an update in case members weren't aware.
So yes, so at the Hillbarton site, there was a retrospective application to for change of use of land to I think it was just quickly looking forward. Yes, for the parking and storage of lorries, vehicles, etc. That was there was a hearing, and that has been allowed. The inspector determined that all of the reasons for refusal, which was landscape impact, adverse landscape impact, impact on residential amenity, principle of development, were all, he agreed that there was going to be harm in all of those respects, that it was contrary to policy, but he allowed it on the basis of the fact that we hadn't been able to demonstrate at the appeal that we had a supply of employment land, and the evidence that was submitted at that hearing indicated a significant short supply, undersupply of employment land, and that appeal was allowed. So that, yes, that's the outcome of that appeal. I mean, we have had some further sort of ongoing questions about that particular issue. And I think the view is that moving forward, the land allocations that are coming forward in the local plan will provide more than enough employment land moving forward to meet our requirements for the forthcoming plan period. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Right, we will jump then to agenda item 9. This is planning application 231143 MFUL. This is land south of Windmill Lane in West Hill, and that's on pages 69 to 129 of your agenda pack. So we're skipping agenda item 8, starting with agenda item 9, and we'll go over to Principal Planning Officer Gareth Stevenson to present the report on that one. Over to you, Gareth.
Good morning, everyone. If you just bear with me a second. I think we're just checking the agenda order.
Okay. Okay. My list says agenda item first.
Yeah.
Wendy.
Yeah. Agenda item 9 first, because that's got the most speakers.
Yep. Okay. It's because we've got the most speakers there. Okay. So we're doing 9 first, then 8.
Good morning, everyone.
Yeah, got the right one up there.
So it looks like we're starting with 231143 MFUL, which is land south of Windmill Lane. This is a full planning application for the erection of 34 dwellings, 35% on-site affordable, 15% off-site affordable, and we're on the fringes of West Hill. So this is a map of the site. We can see that the red edge shows the application site. We have the built-up area boundary for West Hill, which goes down the edges here and past the neighbouring site of Eastfield here. So we're outside of the built-up area boundary. We are surrounded by residential development. We have moorlands over here. As I said, we have the Eastfield developments here. We have Eastfield Gardens down here and the newer West Hayes development over here. We have no objection from the landscape officer who has noted that we have a slightly adverse impact on the landscape with mitigation. To an extent, there's an unavoidable impact on the character, but the site is well contained and therefore he considered it was generally acceptable. But that map there gives you a kind of a context for our development today. So this shows the general layout in relation to the landscaping scheme which is proposed. We have a main access here to Windmill Lane. We have a circular loop layout with dwellings attached to that. We have a buffer area here which serves kind of a dual purpose. It gives relief from the protected trees and also provides a wildlife corridor. We have an attenuation tank here, open space here. And what's shown here is a pedestrian footpath which links to the adjacent development site of Eastfield, and condition 4 of the recommendation secures that. This next slide shows the affordable housing. If you just bear with me, we have 8 social rented properties in this corner. 4 shared ownership nearer the entrance. And so we have 35 on-site affordable, 15% off-site affordable housing, which is a position that's been agreed by the Housing Enabling Officer and represents to us a realistic offer. This shows the palette of materials to be used. We have a mixture of render, brick to be used, but it shows a variation within the overall layout. This plan here shows us the tree preservation orders and trees to be removed. For example, there's one in the corner here, a small beech tree, a beech tree in the southwest corner. And there's also conditions to protect these trees. So we have a lot of tree preservation orders, including this tree here, to be mindful of. This shows the drainage for the proposal. We have the dark brown shows the foul drainage, which goes to a mains. There's no objection from South West Water, subject to additional conditions 12 and 13 of the recommendation. There's generally a need for investigation and improvement, potential improvements of the nearby packaged sewage plant. We'll come back to that issue later. In terms of surface water, you can see here that the attenuation pond and subterranean cellular tank restricts the flow to 5.3 litres per second, and that gets directed to an off-site sewer, and that was deemed acceptable to Devon County Council Lead Flood Authority. Now this shows the access at the top of Windmill Lane and Benderick Road. The visibility is proposed to be improved by altering the curbing, and there is a condition which precludes residential occupation until this is in place. Benderick Road is a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. The aim is to get around 53 meter visibility in each direction, and the Highway Authority raised no objection to the proposal. This shows the gradient of the site and the properties in relation to it. So higher up the site, we have the bungalows, and you can see most of them further down the site as you get down towards the southern part of it. Slightly larger, detached, space in between the properties there. So it generally slopes down to this corner here, which is where you've got the open space and attenuation tank. To give you an idea of the type of housing, here's semi-detached, probably shared ownership type dwellings. The bungalows near the entrance with vehicular entrance with Windmill Lane. You can see we have a mixture of detached with brick. This one is nearest in the corner near Windmill Lane, which is render. And more types of housing, and then we have the affordable, the social rent, which goes in the top corner of the field. And again, we have a mixture of render to try and break up the mass. So turning to the photographs, this shows the existing site with Windmill. So you've got Windmill Lane here, and this is the actual site here. So this is where the vehicular access would be. This has been taken from Banderick Road and Windmill Lane, so this is where the curbing would be altered, as I showed you on the previous plan. Here's pictures of the site, including along I think that's the western boundary, in the southwest corner of the site. So that kind of shows you the topography, the kind of current usage we're looking at. So turning to the main issues, if I just bring up the layout to talk through. So the site is considered to be accessible to a range of services and facilities within West Hill itself. We talked about the footpath which will connect it to the site, the adjacent site of Eastfield. If I just bring up a suitable layout. Subject to the off-site highway works, there's no objection from DCC Highways. There's on-site ecology is provided for. As I said, we have a buffer area. And off-site harm is mitigated with a BNG offer as well. And so there's no objection from our ecologists. TPOs surround the site, but the suitable buffer and subject to construction methods, there's no objection from the tree officer. Surface water is suitably attenuated, and therefore there's no objection, as I say, from the Lead Flood Authority. South West Water also subject to condition investigation and potential upgrading of the package plant capacity, do not object. We have a suitable affordable housing offer, and therefore there's no objection. We have a suitable, or getting very close to signing a suitable 106, which would mitigate the impact of the development, which would secure affordable housing, open space, habitat contribution, and off-site BNG. So because we're outside of the built-up area boundary, there is conflict with the development plan. We're outside of the, like I said, the built-up area boundary, and therefore it's not a planned-led development in a typical fashion. And therefore, taking into account the December amendments to the NPPF, a flat balance should be applied, whereas before we had a tilted balance. However, there's material consideration which outweigh this conflict. In short, we need more housing in order to adopt a new local plan. The site was included in the emerging local plan during the Strategic Planning Committee, this and the next door site. The direction of travel under the new government seeks to boost housing as shown in the written ministerial statement that was published in July. And without harm arising from the conflict with the development plan, a recommendation of approval is made as per the report. In terms of updates, there's only a small minor one. Condition 7 refers to a plan which has been superseded and updated. It's to do with the access. Simply adds a scale bar, so it's just a revision of that plan, and that should be added to the plan list as well. So as I say, recommendation of approval, subject to completion of 106 and adoption of the appropriate assessment and the conditions listed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have a number of speakers, and they've asked to be taken in a slightly different order from what you have in your pack. So we start with Philip Shaw. If you'd like to come up to the podium, and if you press the button, that goes on.
Thank you. Good morning. The most recent history for this greenfield was an application for 2 houses which was refused. This refusal was upheld on appeal. I'd like to think that the planning inspector on that occasion had valid reason to state the main issues in this case are the effect of the proposal on the character and appearance of the area and whether the new dwellings would be in a sustainable location. He went on to state it would fail to comply with the local plan, which only allows development in the countryside where it would not harm the environmental qualities within which it is located, including landform and patterns of settlement. Furthermore, he stated the proposal would be contrary to LP Policy D1 because it would fail to reinforce the key characteristics of the area, and its scale, massing and height would not relate well to its context. The proposal would not comply with the adopted West Hill Village design statement because this requires new dwellings located near BUABs to be in sympathy with the surrounding countryside, which this proposal is not. He concluded the development itself would seriously harm the character and appearance of the area. We are now faced with 34 houses. He was considering 2. It seems that the views of the existing residents who will be affected by this development are irrelevant. There's been no discussion and no dialogue from the planners. There have been many objections lodged on the planning portal, including questions and requests for clarification, but nothing in response. On a specific point relating to my mother's home, I note that on page 22 of the report it states the properties in the north, 5 Windmill Lane, 4 Seasons, are a sufficient distance from the proposed dwellings so as not to be impacted in terms of amenity. Therefore, the proposal is considered to comply with policy D1 in this respect. However, the plans propose to build 2-storey properties at the top left-hand corner of the garden of 5 Windmill Lane. This is on rising land as you go up the hill, so it will be elevated above the existing garden and property. It is not accepted that this will not impact and overlook this property, despite the fact that the report today suggests that the topography has been taken into account. Can the planning representative today provide any evidence that this has been properly assessed and addressed, perhaps with some form of modelling? If not, we object to these 2 properties being cited at this point. At the recent Strategic Planning Committee, I asked for clarification of how the original assessment for 25 dwellings was calculated, which it stated took into account discounted areas of the site. So I assume some thought and analysis was put into the figure published. The planning representative said it was based on a standard formula, which I've heard stated before, and instead of giving detail on that formula and the figure released for Windmill Lane, he simply stated he thought the site could accommodate more houses. I do wonder how the residents can get a straightforward answer to a straightforward question, or is this confidential information? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Press left or right?
You could just leave it on for the next speaker, actually. Thank you. Okay, we'll attempt to answer some of those questions when we've heard from the other speakers, in case there's further questions. So, Patricia Donithorne.
Chair, when you turn the speaker off, it resets the 3 minutes. So they do need to turn it off.
Okay, so if you could switch it off and on again. Is that sufficient, Wendy? Thank you.
Good morning. Continuing from what Philip has said, I would mention that the aerial photograph shown wasn't the complete photograph of Windmill Lane, which is unfortunate.
The original application included 36 properties, but this was reduced after it was pointed out the developer had made a mistake and some of those properties had been added where existing properties already stood. So on the face of it, without clarification, we have a site that was originally assessed at a maximum of 25 dwellings, but then the developer asked for 44% more and is not challenged by the planning department but simply accepted. Was the original assessment flawed? Was it not an It was not an approximate figure given, but a maximum figure. Perhaps we could have clarification today. The present density is out of character with Windmill Lane, and at the Strategic Planning Committee, the planning representative stated West Hill was generally of low density, but then dismissed this by saying they had to make good use of land available. We note that in the report prepared for committee, under the heading Impact on Character and Appearance of the Area, page 32, that the proposed development will have a density of 24 dwellings per hectare, contrasting with the existing density of approximately 6 per hectare on Windmill Lane. We do not understand, therefore, how anyone can say that this development is in character with its surroundings, which must be a direct comparison with Windmill Lane. We would have hoped some consideration would be given to existing residents, and if this were to proceed, to at least insist on a design which is in character with its surroundings, that is the lane intended to be used as access. And access. 2 photographs were shown of each end of the lane, but not the central part. Windmill Lane is not an appropriate access road for such a development. The lane will become unsafe with the increased volume of traffic, particularly taking into account the blind bend. Highways state it's a low-speed lane due to its geometry. We would have thought that said something in itself. Turning to sustainability. Is it correct to assume that due to a change of national housing policy, none of the previous criteria for consideration, such as sustainability and provision of local services, are relevant, and the next generation will be asked to deal with the sustainability crisis in years to come? There's no need for further significant development within West Hill. There are very few jobs, a very limited bus service which doesn't run late into the evening and is non-existent on Sundays. Whatever anyone says, any influx of new residents will rely on cars for transport. Very few people cycle within West Hill due to its unsafe roads and gradients. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next speaker is Guy Peters. And again, if you could just switch the microphone off and then back on again, please. Thank you.
Good morning, councillors, officers. The village shop in West Hill is under threat as the owner of the site wishes to redevelop it with much reduced retail space, which the present operator says would not be economically viable. An initial planning application regarding this has been withdrawn. The secondary school in Ottery St Mary's is at capacity and will not expand. Where will the children go to school and how will this be funded? It seems no one wishes to answer these questions. An executive partner of the local GP surgery, Dr. Kerr, submitted an objection to this application in which he states that a further development on the western boundary of the practice area will inevitably create further care delays for all concerned. No other alternative GP medical facilities exist within several miles of this proposed development. Communities should be developed where services can be provided for its residents, including newly built facilities for schooling and healthcare. We keep on hearing that the right homes should be built in the right places. That consideration is no more better illustrated than in this instance. Flooding, sewerage, foul water. There are no existing adoptable foul sewers located within the site boundary. Due to the levels on the site, foul flows from plots 26-27 and 28-35 will need to be pumped using private package pumping stations. How is this sustainable, and what happens if a pump fails or needs servicing? Surface water. Runoff rates were calculated for the field based on its size. The range 5.3 litres per second to 12.9 litres per second were used, but with the current rainfall levels, how relevant and up to date are those figures? I did hear earlier the councillor was saying 5.3 litres is the recognised number. It's clearly important to have these flows correct as they run off not contain any runoff not contained by the actuation pond and tank can only go into housing below the field. There are no existing adoptable surface water sewers, ditches or watercourses located on or near the site. The nearest is 222 metres away, yet South West Water have confirmed that there is an adequate capacity to take the flows. Does this meet up with sewage that then gets discharged into the River Otter as is currently done? The note below highlights the issue South West Water have. In addition to the housing issue, comments have been received by South West Water regarding the capacity of Fluxton wastewater treatment works and provision of potable water. South West Water have noted the need to upgrade the WWTW, but pointed towards this being able to be carried out within the lifespan of any subsequent planning consent. Therefore, conditions are suggested to overcome this issue. As such, a recommendation of approval is made. As the officer's recommendation of the approval conflicts with the views of a ward member, this major application is referred to members of the Development Management Committee. They cannot deal with what they have at the moment, so how can an officer recommend approval for something that doesn't work at present? And what are the conditions? Please can we have this explained today? The site proposed will have a major impact on surface and foul water, joining an already not fit for purpose water treatment system. Is this also something East Devon District Council are simply prepared to overlook in the quest to reach housing targets at the expense of reasonable logic? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And finally, Elaine Cook.
Thank you. The attenuation ponds. Concern has been expressed by West Hill Parish Council in their consultee response regarding the danger to children from the proposed attenuation pond. Residents echo this concern. 4 children under 5 were known to have drowned in this type of pond in 22-23 in the USA. They are difficult to escape from. If they're not maintained correctly, they can become clogged with sediment and rubbish, reducing their effectiveness. I've seen the one in Cranbrook in a previous summer, which was stagnant, covered in algae, with a cloud of mosquitoes over the top and smelly. What plans would be put in place to ensure the proposed attenuation pond for this development would be safe to children, and who would be responsible for the maintenance and ongoing cost in this regard, particularly in the long term? The construction period. If the application is granted in any form, we would request that good and regular communication between the developer and residents is established, including an initial meeting, a timetable of works, including an indication of how disruptive they will be, for example, in terms of noise. Furthermore, as previously suggested by West Hill Parish Council, we would ask this committee to confirm they would not allow parking of vehicles relating to this development construction on Windmill Lane, as there is simply not the space on the lane to be used as a car park for this purpose. To this end, perhaps the committee could explain where they would expect all construction materials to be stored and the people working on the construction to park their private and business vehicles during the construction period. We do not wish all these matters to be considered at the last minute to the detriment of existing residents. In conclusion, the residents of Windmill Lane would again ask for our views to be heard and to be given dialogue with the planning department. It seems they are more than happy to engage with the developer, but not their own residents. The residents urge the planning committee to take this opportunity to ensure that, if a development is to take place, it is an appropriate one for this site, accessed by this lane in this woodland village. If the development were to be approved in one form or another, we would again ask for the density to be reduced to something more in keeping with its immediate surroundings, which would be the existing properties on Windmill Lane. There are presently 11 properties on the lane, and we're being asked to absorb another 34. Is this reasonable? As we do not get an opportunity to reply to anything else discussed during this committee meeting, We sincerely hope all the matters raised can be addressed by the committee and the planning officer here today, so that at least we know we are being listened to. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And next we'll hear from Francis Pullman from West Hill Parish Council.
Thank you, Chair. Two West Hill applications are being considered at today's meeting, and I'd like to speak about both of them at the same time because the two sites are adjacent to each other and I believe actually have a bearing on each other. The Parish Council has responded to both of these applications, which together will see the development of about 64 dwellings on greenfields outside the built-up area boundary. The proposed developments are contrary to the neighbourhood plan, contrary to EDDC's planning policies, and are non-sustainable, as future homeowners will be heavily reliant on car travel to and from the village. We continue to object to these applications and are concerned also to protect the site's trees that do so much to define the character of the village. The two sites have been allocated in the new emerging local plan, and we believe this shouldn't influence the decisions to be made today. The applications should be considered today purely on their merits. Consultants' reports provided with both applications acknowledge the risk of flooding and recommend development of a strategy for surface water drainage. The two sites are adjacent, and I question whether enough consideration has been given to the potential for further increased flooding if both sites were to be approved. The combined effect of development on both sites could result in an impact greater than the sum of the two parts considered in isolation. Currently, it appears that the developers will each be required to present separate plans to manage a problem which is actually common to the two adjacent sites. To a layman like me, this appears to be a recipe for something to go wrong and have two developers each blaming the other for the resulting problems. I hope that when making a decision on these applications, the committee members are clear and convinced that the very real problem of surface water flooding that's already being experienced by some residents is going to be dealt with in a properly coordinated manner between the two developers on the two sites. A similar concern exists with regard to the treatment of sewage. We ask that the capacity modelling to be carried out by South West Water considers the impact on West Hill should both sites be developed. The officers' reports for each individual site contain identically worded comments about Fluxton wastewater treatment plant needing to be upgraded. It's not clear whether the upgrade referred to is for each individual site or for the two sites combined. We strongly believe that development of the two West Hill sites should not commence until there is sufficient proven capacity to support the additional West Hill dwellings plus others planned for Ottery, St Mary and surrounds. I hope that the members of the committee have sufficient knowledge about the upgrade plans so they can make an objective decision on these two applications. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very good timing. Okay, and we move to the agent, Catherine Nee.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Catherine Nee of Collier Planning, and I'm speaking on behalf of Strong Fox Homes, who control the land adjoining Windmill Lane, West Hill. The site is within a sustainable location adjacent to the existing built-up area boundary of West Hill. The Strategic Planning Committee recently supported the officer recommendation for the site to be allocated in the emerging local plan. Therefore, whilst the site is currently outside of the built-up area boundary of West Hill, the direction of the local plan is that the site will be included within it. The proposals include the provision of a pedestrian and cycle link to the site to the east. This will provide residents of the site and the residents of Windmill Lane, and beyond, with a direct route through to local services, including the primary school and shops. The provision of this link can be secured by condition. All other technical considerations have been agreed with the relevant statutory bodies, including highways and access, ecology and flood risk. South West Water have confirmed that there is capacity in the existing network for the supply of water, and for surface water runoff to be accommodated within the public sewer. Modelling work is ongoing to determine whether the foul sewer requires upgrading, and a condition would prevent the development being occupied prior to adequate provision being in place. Development of the site will also help to resolve a localised surface water flooding issue via additional measures such as gullies to the north and features to slow runoff of the site to the south. The development would deliver much needed housing, including affordable housing, the delivery of which has fallen well below target within the area in recent years. The Section 106 agreement has been signed by the Council and all other parties. The size of the development means it will be built out quickly and is therefore capable of forming part of the Council's 5-year housing land supply. Strong Votes are committed to commencing the development as soon as possible. We therefore request your support for the officer's recommendation to grant planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, and finally we hear from the ward member, Councillor Jess Bailey, who can't be here but has sent a statement for Wendy to read out.
Thank you, Chair. As ward member, I wish to confirm my continued objection to this planning application. I am sorry that I'm unable to attend because I am away today. I also regret that the determination of this long-running planning application could not be deferred as I have requested to the next planning meeting to enable me to attend. I am fully aware of the pressures that EDDC is under to deliver housing. However, I continue to believe that this application should be refused for the following reasons. First, as a member of the Strategic Planning Committee, I voted against the site being allocated in the new local plan. One of the principal reasons for doing so was that EDDC, in its desperate quest to meet government's housing targets, is actually ignoring its own hierarchy of settlements in its treatment of West Hill. West Hill does not have the services and facilities to qualify as a Tier 4 settlement. Don't just take my word for it. The inspector in the Elsden Lane PIP earlier this month described them as modest. It is not sustainable to grant planning permission for 34 houses when services are modest. The development will inevitably generate very significant traffic movements because daily needs cannot be met within the village. There will be an opportunity to test and challenge, if necessary, West Hill's status as a Tier 4 settlement at the examination stage of the local plan. To approve this site now before that has taken place is preemptive. Second, the site falls outside EDDC's built-up area boundary. The Elsden Lane PIP appeal decision issued this month also provides a clear basis for EDDC to continue to uphold its built-up area boundary. Despite all the noise about housing pressures, ministerial statements, the revised NPPF and housing targets, the inspector gave full weight to West Hill's built-up area boundary in the existing local plan. The Elsden Lane PIP was refused because the inspector found conflict with the development plan in respect of its special strategy for housing set by statutories 1, 2, 7 of the local plan. The built-up area boundaries form part of the statutory development plan and will have adopted following consultation and scrutiny at examination. To allow new dwellings to be built outside the built-up area boundaries, even in small numbers, would undermine the council development strategy for the location of housing in settlements and the countryside. The proposal therefore conflicts with the development plan as a whole, and this is a material consideration which attracts significant weight. In my view, the planning committee today should follow the inspector in the Elsden Lane PIP and give full weight to the existing built-up area boundary, and should reject this site, which is also outside the built-up area boundary. Third, I am aware that Devon County Council highways officers have objected to this planning application. As the Devon County Councillor who actually lives in the village, I completely disagree with the position taken by them. Windmill Lane is completely inadequate for this scale of development. It is too narrow, and I am concerned about the junction with Ben Darroch Road and the road safety implications of this proposal.
Okay, thank you very much.
I've still got
There's
more.
more.
There is more.
Right, yeah, carry on.
Fourth, sewage from West Hill and Ottery St Mary is processed at Fluxton Sewage Treatment Works. My research shows that this treatment works is operating beyond capacity. I have been advised in response to an FOI that capacity of the treatment works is 8,428 people, excluding tourists visiting the area. However, the population data which I obtained from Devon County Council shows the population in the catchment of the sewage treatment works is 9,196. Therefore, Fluxton sewage treatment work is already stretched beyond breaking point, and the regular discharges of untreated sewage into the River Otter are a reflection of this. I am really concerned that the Grampian conditions, including condition 13, are inadequate. The sewage network clearly requires major upgrading, and this is not fully reflected in the condition as it is currently drafted. The condition suggests that there may be sufficient capacity when there is clearly not. It is important that this is clarified because harm will arise from the development unless a sufficiently robust position is taken by EDDC. The conditions should start with the wording, no development shall commence unless and until. And then it should then go on to state, Fluxton sewage treatment and the wider infrastructure have been upgraded to address the current deficiency and to allow the development to go ahead without causing harm. The proposed infrastructure improvements and an agreed timetable from the implementation has been submitted to and approved by EDDC, and the improvements need to be implemented to the satisfaction of EDDC prior to any occupation of the development. Just 2 more paragraphs now. Finally, under no circumstances allow the caveat at the end of the condition to remain in place. This, as drafted, This, as drafted, allows EDDC the flexibility to approve an alternative method of dealing with sewage and worst case scenario that could potentially be tankering. I very much hope you will refuse this application. In the event that you choose to support it, I urge you to review the conditions relating to sewage and surface water treatment to ensure a sufficiently robust position is taken.
Thank you, Wendy. You can now breathe. Okay. Shall we, can we address some of those issues that have been raised first before we go to questions from committee? I've got a note, there's some about overlooking of houses on Windmill Lane, is it? There have been some queries about the density of the site and also in comparison to the surroundings. Concerns about the pond in terms of safety and maintenance, concerns about flooding, and also the points Councillor Bailey has made about sewage. If we could deal with those first, then we'll take questions from committee.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the history and other developments in and around West Hill, is the appeal that was dismissed was 10 years ago and was for 2 dwellings. So a lot has changed in terms of the planning landscape in the last 10 years, especially in East Devon, where the local plan was adopted after that in 2016. And for example, on the national level, we had the NPPF, which was revised in December. Regarding the PIP application, that was in a different location than obviously this. So different merits, different distances to the services and facilities on West Hill. So you really have to look at what is actually presented before you, what it offers, taking into account the affordable as well, which wouldn't be been a part of those two dwellings. Turning to density, the report addresses that and talks about the surrounding. There is a mixture. Windmill Lane is obviously less dense than what's proposed, and I think there is a balancing act between getting housing on here and making sure you respect the general area. We think we've got the balances right as per the report, noting that the NPPF encourages efficient use of land. So we're looking at allocations. I think during the Strategic Planning Committee, when they were allocated, the question was put to Mr. Freeman, you know, what about density, what happens? And I think he responded saying you have to look at when an application, if it's suitable. So I'd invite members to look at the pattern of development, large detached properties with greenery in and around there, and quite a self-contained site, according to the landscape officer, means that we don't think it's considered out of character. With regards to services and facilities in terms of the NHS and school, this would be mostly dealt with under SIL legislation rather than 106. The NHS didn't respond to a consultee response, and the school, in terms of education, would have to bid through monies through the SIL process. I'm just going to hand you over to Wendy to talk about the drainage, South West Water.
So one of the questions asked was, have South West Water looked at the two sites, this site and the site that we're going to consider afterwards cumulatively? Yes, they have. The response that came from South West Water, the most recent response, was actually a combined document that was addressing these two sites along with some other sites that are before South West Water today. Conversations that we've been having with South West Water recently, they've been explaining that effectively what happens is it is upon the grant of planning permission, a scheme sort of goes into their sort of programme of development that is likely to be coming forward and that they need to be able to accommodate. So that's the stage when they would start to do a detailed assessment of capacity at the Fluxton wastewater treatment works, and any identified upgrade works would then be programmed in. Which ties in with the queries that Councillor Bailey has raised about the wording of the planning conditions, the Grampian style conditions. So South West Water's recommendations were initially to say that no dwelling should be occupied until any necessary works have been completed, or until I think a specified point, 18 months time, I think end of 2025. Now, the officer view is if the works are necessary, they need to be complete before the dwellings are occupied, not with that sort of opt-out of if a certain deadline is met, they can then be occupied, because if the works are necessary, they're necessary. The wording of the condition as it is, no dwelling shall be occupied, is something which we've seen recent planning inspectors agree is suitable and robust wording, reflecting that Grampian style condition. And obviously it is within the for East Devon Council to enforce that. What is anticipated is that obviously the developers themselves would want the comfort that those works will be completed, because the last thing they want is to have spend a lot of money building homes which then can't be occupied. But there's normally close liaison between the developer and South West Water in any event once they actually are getting on site. So we are satisfied that these two schemes have been looked at cumulatively and that the impacts can be accommodated satisfactorily without adverse impacts. Also linked into the drainage is the comments raised about the attenuation pond, which I will hand over to Mr. Stevenson.
Thank you. So this is addressed in the report also. So you obviously have an attenuation pond, as you could have seen on the on the layout. This would have marginal planting around to dissuade the public from entering it. Further, there's a half a metre aquatic bench, so it goes along before you get to the middle of the pond before it dips. There's kind of an underwater bench in terms of like a plateau before it goes deeper before you get to the middle, which is a typical safety measure that you'd see on these attenuation ponds. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, questions from committee then? Councillor Barlow.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a few questions. So looking at them, obviously, should we agree to accept this, pass this? It's a small thing, but again, we've been drilled into us. Biodiversity is important, especially in an area like this, in the wooded village. I can't see any solar panels, Swift boxes, bee bricks, anything like that doesn't seem to be in there. Is that something that will come later, or is that something we can condition now? Certainly in the local plan, the emerging local plan, it's supposed to be on all houses, and I think it's important we look at that. On this Grampian order, I think we've, on many of the ones now we get this, how are we going to be assured that the works have been completed? I think it's been said that we don't have the in-house expertise. Are we going to be going to outside people to assure ourselves, or are we just trusting South West Water's word on this? And that's all I've got at the moment.
Thank you. Any other questions, and then we'll take them all together. Councillor Jenny Brown.
Well, you might have said this earlier, but I'm just confused. So if we're looking at this as a site now, yet strategic planning also looked at it as a site and put it in the plan, how does that affect things? I just get confused. So how are we supposed to be looking at this?
Okay, we'll deal with that one, but I think the answer will be on its merits, irrespective of whether it's in the, or proposed to be in the local plan or not.
And how do we look at it? Do we look at it at the plan we've got now, or do we look at it at the emerging local plan, or do we look at it that we haven't actually got a plan because we haven't got a 5-year land supply? How do we look at it?
Okay, we'll look at it in terms of the existing local plan, and in terms of the 5-year housing land supply at the moment, we can get away with a 4-year housing land supply when we have 4.5. Okay, I'll go to Councillor Hall and then Councillor Faithful.
Thank you, Chair. Got a number of questions, so I'll try and take them slowly so the officers can write them down. Can you please clarify? I'm under the impression that the affordable housing on this site is 35% on site because any more is not viable, but yet the adjacent site is 50%. So I'd like some clarity on that, please. Obviously, as part of the recommendation, we are supposed to adopt the appropriate assessment, but I cannot find an appropriate assessment for this application. It does not appear to be on the website associated documents. Some of the documents, for example, concerning trees and some of the ecology stuff are over a year old. Are officers happy that they are still viable and appropriate? I think, if my memory serves me correct, Councillor Bailey, Jess Bailey, mentioned about surface water pipes going through the root protection zone. And can you clarify if that is correct and why that is deemed appropriate? If I could just ask for a bit of clarity on the attenuation pond, as it was mentioned by one of the residents. I was always under the understanding that when an attenuation pond was put in properly with proper assessments, other than at times of extreme weather, it should always be dry. I'd like clarity on that, please. I'm just wondering whether the site is to have double yellow lines. Now that might seem a strange question, but on the site layout there are specific visitors parking spaces. So I'm not quite sure how visitor only parking spaces work if the rest of the site can be parked on anyway. I can't see how the number of 8 has come along with that. According to the transport statement, there is a section of the proposed site which is to be a private drive. Now, I presume that is to be looked after under a sort of a management scheme. But the question that arises is, will, for example, the refuse lorries use that private drive or not? Because if the answer is not, then we end up with a whole load of bins dumped on the curb in one area. Thank you.
Okay, and Councillor Faithful.
Thank you, Chair. Could I get a clarification? The house to the right of the top right-hand corner, that's the one. Distance between that and the nearest house was, what I can make it is about 20 metres, so it's under 25 metres. Also, what was the other? Oh, who owns the curb on the junction of Windmill Lane and Bendarroch Road? Has they got the okay to move the curb? Or is that private land? Is it part of the houses or is it somebody else?
Okay, any further questions before we get off? Oh, right. Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, Chair. I'm concerned about the lack of education facilities. The local school appears to be over capacity, as does King's, which is just down the road. So where are the children going to go to school? And it's all right, you know, well, this will come in the fullness of time, but if people are moving in, they need to take their children to school. They can't walk because there's no footways, which is against all the rules, regulations. You can't, there's no actual sustainable infrastructure to support this development. Because if you look at the hospital, the doctor has said he's over capacity. He's had to cut back twice on his area. So everything is looking at it in a negative direction, in my view, as to sustaining this development. And I feel that at the moment, with the information I've got, I feel unlikely to support it, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey and Councillor Haggerty.
Thank you, Chair. Only one question, that my others have been already spoken. In Councillor Bailey's report, she said that highways have objected, but in our report, there's no objection, but with conditions. Is that the same? That's the only question I'm asking.
Yeah, I noticed that. Okay, if there's no more questions, oh yes, Councillor Hall has one more.
Sorry, I forgot this one, and Councillor Bailey just reminded me. Did I understand correctly from the officer that to gain the additional monies to help with education provision, this has to be done through a bidding process? Because if that's right, that just seems awfully wrong to me.
Right, quite a list for you to deal with their officers. I'll let you decide how to share those out.
Well, we'll just try and split these between us. So the first question, actually, looking at this, is probably best, Mr. Stevenson, about the provision of solar Swift box in terms of ecological provision.
Thank you. Yeah, so as part of the report, you can see all the ecological mitigation they're putting in, and to re-emphasise, there's no objection from our ecologists, our in-house ecologists. Although there's not specific Swift boxes, we do have above and beyond what we would expect for biodiversity on this site because of this corridor, because of the open space. It's suitable for foraging and habitat. Most of the trees are being retained. And so to reiterate, there's no objection from the ecologist. Turning to the solar panels, which you also mentioned, this isn't part of the adopted local plan, this requirement. And so that's why they presumably haven't done it. As you say, emerging is emerging, and as it progresses, it gets more weight, and then we can start seeking those type of things. But at the minute, we cannot. The appropriate assessment is on page 108 of the agenda. Just to answer your question, sir.
So moving on then, so South West Water, the question raised about who is going to enforce or check. So, I mean, effectively, South West Water are the statutory body. Just looking at the wording of the condition as it currently is drafted. Sorry, I thought I had it up. Okay. So effectively, the first part of the condition is, and this is regarding foul disposal, is that it needs to be evidenced whether or not South West Water currently has the capacity. Now, this is something that South West Water themselves have indicated that they would be undertaking themselves. They are the statutory body. This is with the duty to provide, to monitor, and they are the people with the expertise. They will be providing the information to us of that information. We don't specifically have in-house drainage engineers at East Devon Council that routinely comment on planning applications. We would normally take the view that a statutory body like South West Water would be giving us the correct information in that regard. It would be possible to employ external consultants to review that information, but we wouldn't normally do that, and it could be quite a costly and onerous capacity. So we would be asking for the information to be submitted to us, and we would then be discussing that in consultation with South West Water, where relevant, with Devon County Council, lead local flood authority, to address whether there are works that need to be done, and then obviously there would be verification given to us of what has been done and when, so that we can then have the confidence that the necessary works are undertaken to allow occupation of the dwellings. So that is what we would be doing in regard to the South West Water. Councillor Brown asked the question in terms of the strategic outlook. How are we assessing this? So currently, the local plan, it's currently the adopted local plan, which is the document with the greatest weight at the moment, and this is outside the built-up area boundary. As we've heard mentioned previously, the government requirement at the moment is only to provide a 4-year housing land supply. That is the situation today. The government, as you know, has consulted on removing this sort of temporary measure, which was only ever introduced as a temporary measure. It was brought in for a 2-year period, and that was in December last year. The likely direction of travel, although we can't know that, is that we will be reverting to the usual requirement for a 5-year housing land supply in the future. But as of today, we do not need to be applying the tilted balance. But we did take advice from King's Counsel on this matter, that applying the level balance how much weight should we be given to the need to be ensuring a good supply of housing? The reason being that we are bringing forward an emerging local plan, and for that plan to be adopted, we will need to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply. So the delivery of housing is still a very important consideration which members should be giving significant weight to. The site has been, Strategic Planning Committee have decided that this site is one that they consider to be a sustainable location for the principle of development, and have voted that it should move forward as a site allocation for the emerging local plan. It is correct to say that that local plan will need to go through examination, and any of these allocations could be subject to challenge. But again, the direction of travel of this council is that at present they do consider this to be a sustainable site for development. But just going back to the ultimate, the document with the greatest weight for decision making today is the current local plan.
Councillor Brown, you want to come?
So is West Hill Tier 4 as it currently stands, or is it going to be Tier 4 going into the emerging local plan?
I don't think there's any tiers in the current, are there? I'm not sure. I think that's a new thing. Okay.
Mrs. Wansby's just going to check that. There's a question about trees. This shows the drainage on the screen, and I think the issue is that the surface water which goes off site here is right on the cusp of the protected area of this tree here, and you see the path goes. So it looks right on the cusp, and it's by no means sure whether it's in and out looking at this scale. On the PowerPoint. However, our arboriculturist doesn't object to it, so he must be confident that this can be accommodated in some way. And we obviously have a tree protection conditioners out well to reinforce that. But I think that's the issue with the tree.
Okay, thank you. And does anybody know the ownership of the curb that Councillor Faithful referred to?
I think it's Highways land, maintained at public expense. I can double check.
Okay, thank you. I had a query about condition 6. It asks for details of cycle storage to be submitted. Does that mean it's actually requiring cycle storage? I wasn't clear reading it whether in that case we've actually required cycle storage to be provided in these houses or alongside.
Just to move things along, whilst that, through you, Chair, if that's okay, there are some other questions we've still yet to come to. So I'll just let Mrs. Stevenson look at that matter. So there was the question from Councillor Hall about attenuation ponds. Are they generally dry? Yes, the answer to that is yes, they are. That is the purpose of them. They are there. It does depend on, from site to site. But the idea is that they are there to be able to take added water in times of heavy rain. So the expectation is that for the most of the time, they would be dry or with just a small amount of water in the bottom of them. Double yellows, there is no proposal to have parking restrictions. The visitor parking indicated on the layout is just an indication that there is designing in some effectively overflow car parking. They wouldn't be allocated as visitor parking. They'd be parking available to whoever wishes. It's just adding in a little bit of parking capacity within the street for visitors to people, or for anybody who may have, more than 2 cars and need some additional parking on the street. The private drives, it is my understanding that within East Devon, the waste trucks will go down private drives to collect. I know in some authorities they do not, but in East Devon, I believe that they do. So we wouldn't expect their need for muster points at the end of those private drives that you see coming off the cul-de-sacs. And Councillor Bailey was asking about the issue of school places, which also lines in with Councillor Hall's query about education and SIL. This council has adopted SIL, and therefore any requests for funding towards additional school places can only come via SIL. If we were not a SIL authority, then Devon County Council would make specific requests for money, which would be looked at on a site-by-site basis and required through a Section 106 agreement. We have adopted SIL. That is the mechanism we have to use now for infrastructure such as additional education facilities and also any additional healthcare, relevant healthcare provision. So that is the stance that the council has taken, adopted, and is the mechanism that that needs to be used for those additional situations. And I sympathise with the concerns of local residents, but members obviously will have heard that there is rarely a development site that doesn't come forward where there is concern about school places, medical places. It isn't a West Hill specific issue, regrettably. It will, it's likely to be a concern for all new housing sites coming forward in the district. Doesn't mean that it isn't a valid concern, but it's something I think would be very challenging to justify reason for refusal in this particular situation. I'll just ask Mr. Stevenson to confirm whether highways do have an outstanding objection to this application at the moment.
No, the highways supports the scheme subject to condition to control the off-site junction with Banderick and Windmill Lane, which are both highway land. And also the bin storage condition, which you mentioned. So that does secure cycle and scooter storage facilities. And the trigger point for that is prior to occupation of the dwelling to which those would relate to. So that's what it seeks to secure and implement. Thank you.
Okay, we've got a few further questions. Councillor Barlow.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, going back to my point, I know it's a small point, I know it probably annoys people, but bird boxes and things, swift boxes, it was brought up at council the other day that we need to add them, it's an important thing. Are you saying that we cannot add that now to this because the ecologically officer has not required it? Or can we say, because this is a departure from the local plan, we can say that this is required to make it acceptable to do that?
In terms of adding swift bird boxes and bat boxes, if appropriate, to the as a planning condition, yes, members could add that it's not an onerous request if members felt that that was something they wanted. We're just going to have a quick look through the ecology report because obviously there is a planning condition saying the development needs to take place in accordance with the ecological recommendations. So it may be that it's already in there, but yes, a planning condition to that effect could be added.
And solar panels?
Sorry, I was just going to refer you to condition 18 of the report for the LEMP, which states it should include the location, design of biodiversity features, including bird boxes, bat boxes, permeable fencing, and other features to be shown clearly on the submitted plan. So it looks like it would come under the scope of condition 18. Thank you.
Okay. I think solar panels, I think at present, we can't insist on those. Is that correct, Wendy?
Yes, there is no policy at the moment that would enable us to specifically require the provision of solar panels.
Well, there's no policy to allow us to build where this is going presently, but can we then insist on it to make it acceptable? I thought that was the whole point of them.
If members felt that that was going to effectively tip the balance in favour of the development, then that would be a decision for them to make.
Okay. Councillor Anne Hall.
Thank you, Chair. As we know, West Hill is classified as a woodland village. The original assessment of 25 properties on this site seems more appropriate than the 34. Where did the extra 9 come from? I know it was 36 and it's dropped down to 34 now, but that's still reasonably high density for this type of settlement. And it just looks like any other normal development in any other village or town. It's shielded, yes, and I like the landscape aesthetics of not having fences in there. It's living hedges, and they've specified 3 species, but it still doesn't, it's still crammed on, too crammed on for my liking for what they classify as a woodland village. And it goes against, if I'm right, the West Hill preferred development scheme that they wanted a low density. Thank you.
Okay. I think woodland village is a description rather than a classification. I'm not sure that there's any actual classification.
I thought it was in their neighbourhood plan, but all adopted, and it's actually on their signage on the village as you go in.
Okay, we'll get officers to deal with that one. Matt, you had another one.
Yeah, it's just 2 follow-up points. Obviously, I did see the couple of paragraphs entitled Ecology Appropriate Assessment on page 108. I was just under the impression that an appropriate assessment was a standard 3 to 4 page document template that you filled in with the appropriate addresses, etc. If East Devon don't do that, then that's fine. Please tell me that and I don't need to ask the question again. The second thing is there a reason why we are not using section 106 to gather educational payments, so that defined educational payments which are deemed to be necessary are provided rather than having to go through a process? My understanding is quite a few councils use section 106 for collecting educational payments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And finally, I think Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, Chair. My question has been adequately covered by your Deputy Chair. However, we were in discussions on various occasions through this council about putting infrastructure first. That was one of our main aims. And with this development, the infrastructure seems to be an add-on to the proposed development. It's not integral to the development itself, which I feel it should be. And what Councillor Matt Hall said about getting the money up front and getting the procedure going for education and health and social. There's no social room here for anybody. There's not even a rather large play park. I mean, it's a little tiny one stuck in a corner for probably up to 10-year-olds, as well as everybody else do. So there's a lack of social cohesion. I don't know if that's a policy or not, but that's how I feel. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any responses there?
Yeah, thank you. So the question about appropriate assessment, when you're doing this appropriate assessment, there's no set length or pro forma that you have to fill in to do that. You may be thinking of a shadow habitat reg assessment. That's when a European protected species is directly under threat, for example, from the Beer Quarry Caves. That's usually what you see appended to an end of a report. So you may be thinking of that.
Sorry, Chair. So coming back to the question we've had again, querying the density of the development. So compared to Windmill Lane to the north, that is a particularly low density road. If you look to the development immediately, well, not immediately, but sort of, if you look at the field to the east, where there was, which we're going to consider later, and that's got a previous resolution, and the site immediately east of that, the densities there are greater. I mean, I think if you look throughout West Hill, the older sites, the older part of the village tend to be larger houses in big spacious plots, and the more modern developments do tend to be of a higher density. I think that's just reflective of land values and the way that building has changed over the years. There is a really significant buffer around this. So I agree that West Hill within their plan very much identifies as being a woodland village, and the retention of that very strong protected tree and hedgerow boundary particularly on the west and southern boundaries is really important, and actually does take up a lot of land. It looks as if the back gardens of those dwellings that will back onto the western side look quite short, but in reality, it will, even though that barrier will not form part of the residential curtilage, it will be there will be a physical boundary to ensure protection of those buffer zones. Nevertheless, it will read as being part of the site and will give a greater feeling of greenness and spaciousness within that site. And again, most of those are detached dwellings in what is nowadays would be considered actually quite spacious plots. Relative to how we were developing 100 years ago, probably less so. And we do have to balance the need to make the best use of urban land. If we're going to build on greenfield sites, whilst we do need to have regard to character of the area, we should also be looking to maximise what we can actually deliver on the site. And the inclusion of 35% affordables does tend to give the appearance of pushing up densities, because the affordables themselves do tend to be on those smaller plots, and then you've got that small row of four, I think, terraced properties, which pushes up the density values, but they're actually, it's only in those small pockets where you've got the higher density. Elsewhere, I think that it's actually quite a loose layout compared to a lot of modern development. So I think the officer view is we've hit the right balance in terms of making the best use of land and respecting the character of the area. The other point raised was about, again, going back to the issue of 106, Councillor Hall was asking, why can't we ask for education? And I go back to the point I made before. This council has chosen to adopt CIL, which is Community Infrastructure Levy. I'm aware that, sorry, I'm talking to the room, not everybody necessarily knows what that means. Community Infrastructure Levy means that every new dwelling that is built is subject to a specific tariff. So a specific sum of money has to be paid to the council for every house built. And that goes into a Community Infrastructure Levy fund. A proportion of that goes directly to the town or parish council for them to spend as they wish. The larger portion stays with East Devon Council to be spent on infrastructure projects. That's a decision that this council has made, and we are now bound by that. And that document, the CIL infrastructure document, clearly states that education will be, the infrastructure required for education will be taken from that Community Infrastructure Levy pot. So we would have no valid grounds to be adding 106 requirements for education contributions on top of that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do seem to recall that we had a request for CIL funding from Exmouth Community College a while back, which we granted. Now, as I recall, was not a competitive process. It was just a bid that came in, and we did grant that. Okay, two more hands up. Councillor Barlow.
Thank you, Chair. And that is correct, because I sit on that SIL board and I know that we are out to bids at the moment. I know education is one of the areas that we have to allocate, not have to allocate, but have priority. Just a question that Councillor Hall asked about, why is this one only 35% with 15% offshore rather than 50% like the other one right next door? What's the difference? Because obviously it would be better to have the houses than a small amount of money.
I'll just take Councillor Jenny Brown's question as well, and
Sorry, what size is the site? Am I just missing it? I can't see what size the site is, and the methodology that you're doing for this number of houses, is that you're doing it on the old plan? Has that changed to what is coming for the new emerging plan? You normally work about 30 per hectare, is it?
I think the
I'd like to know the size of the site.
Yeah, when we're looking at sites in strategic planning, I know Mr. Freeman always stresses that it's just a standard formula that they use for how many houses could be expected a site to yield. But he accepts that that may vary for various reasons. It may be possible to get more, maybe that you get less if there are other constraints.
Microphone.
Yeah, yeah.
Is the size shown on the application here?
Can't recall having seen it. Does it say anywhere what size the site is? How many hectares?
Thank you. Okay, so within the report, it talks about the density. So the site area overall, the red edge, is 2 hectares. If you take the dwellings in relation to those 2 hectares, you're looking at 17 dwellings per hectare. If you're looking about the actual area to be developed, so excluding the spaces and gaps where nothing's being built, then you're looking at 24 dwellings per hectare, as per the report. Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay. Members, would you like a break before we go into debate? Shall we take a vote on that? Because I can see one nod, one shake. How many members would like to take a break before we go into debate? Just 5-minute comfort break?
Yes. There was one question.
Sorry, we've got another question to deal with. Well, let's take a vote on a comfort break first. And
to be fair, if even one person needs a comfort break, then I think
yeah.
we should have it.
Okay, fine. I think we'll answer this last question, then we'll take 5 minutes.
So we were asked the question, why is this site proposing 35% on-site affordable homes with a 15% off-site affordable contribution, and why is the adjoining site providing 50% on-site? The reason is that the site that we will be considering next came in and it offered a fully policy compliant 50% affordable housing, which obviously we were pleased to see. This site has come forward and initially was offering only 35%. And they've subsequently increased the offer to add that 15% off-site. And we have taken the view that whilst it is not fully policy compliant, that it is satisfactory. The Housing Enabling Officer has looked at this and has taken the view that she feels that it is a realistic offer. And we have accepted the sort of the upgraded offer of 35% plus 15%. And consider that that is adequate for us to be able to provide officer support for the application.
And again, sorry, Chair, just before we go for a break, if this committee decided that they wanted to up that to 50%, is that something realistic we can do or not? Just because we want houses?
Well, the difficulty is that we don't know whether the developer would accept that. So if the resolution, I think it would be challenging. I think realistically we should be considering this on the basis of what is on the table as it stands, which is the 35% with the 15%.
even though this is not compliant, obviously, with the other policies that we have, and we are now saying that we are going to stray further from the local plan by not taking the 50% and allowing them to be outside the built area to do all these things and then not have 50%. So is it something that if we decided we wanted to insist on that, the developer can always say then no, and he, I presume, would have to appeal then?
Members could take that decision that that was the grounds that they're granting it on. I would remind members in terms of consistency that, for example, at committee last month, the two schemes at Woodbury, which were in the same situation, development outside the built-up area boundary, were permitted on the basis of 35% on-site and 15% off-site. So we'd need to be clear as to why in this case we felt that 50% was necessary when previously we have taken a slightly more pragmatic approach.
Would it be because the one right next door is 50%? Would that be a pragmatic, or not pragmatic, but would that be a reasonable assumption that if the one next door can do it, why can't this one do it?
I don't think that it would be, no. I think we need to look at this in sight. We need to look at what policy, what decision making are we doing, and in terms of consistency, I don't think that it would be appropriate to say just because next door are doing it, you have to do it too.
I seem to recall the two applications we had last month in Woodbury were exactly the same, weren't they? One was offering 50% and the other was 35% with 15% off-site, wasn't it? I mean, I've got to remind you, 35% on-site, 15% off-site is policy compliant in that does add up to 50%. We could attempt to insist, but I think we'd probably have to defer for further consultations with the developer. I don't think we could just impose that as a condition. They could always come back at a later stage and say this just isn't viable for us to deliver on site anyway.
I would just reiterate as well that the comments of the housing enabling officer, who obviously works day in, day out with the current market conditions and knows what they are and what's reasonable in the current climate, the current economic climate we're in. And she doesn't object to that. So you'd have to have good reason to move away from her comments. Thank you.
Okay. Just to answer Councillor Jenny Brown, on page 95, it says the site is 2.1 hectares. So, yeah, I've found that one now. Okay, we'll take 5 minutes, which means we will come back at 5 minutes to.
Well,
Okay, members, if we can reconvene. Got a lot to get through just this morning. We're nearly at 12 o'clock.
Damien, oh, you're supposed to be sitting here, you're sitting there,
I just thought there was a bit more room, that was all. This is linked up to me, so that's fine.
That's fine.
Yeah, I'm usually next to Wendy just for space purposes. That was all. I thought there's a chance to spread out a bit more. It's a change being over this end.
Change is as good as
exactly.
Change of view, Damien. Yeah, it's good for you. Yeah, got to keep it fresh. Okay, members. So, oh, yep. Sorry, Brian hasn't come back yet. Thank you, Jenny.
No, I'm over the door. I'm only one.
In your own time, Brian. No, don't spill your coffee. No, no, absolutely not. Yeah, yeah.
My brother joined the RAF and then he put his trainers outside of the window. The door.
Right, members. Okay. So we'll now go into debate. Who'd like to kick us off? Councillor Faithful.
Thank you, Chair. I have to say I'm quite disappointed at putting this square layout is just out of keeping in West Hill. And I do find it quite crammed. And I know we've got other places. You just go south of the next site we're looking at, and they banged in houses so tight that there's practically no garden at all. The suggestion that is urban, I thought this is a tier 4, which is fairly rural. There's still rural communities out. So I just find this I do find this rather cramped and over development of the site. Thank you, Chair.
Well, I think Mrs. Ormsby said in terms of modern developments is actually fairly generous and fairly reasonable sized gardens, which would extend, even if the curtilage of the building doesn't, they would extend towards the boundaries, and therefore would have a reasonably spacious feeling. But yeah, I think modern developments unfortunately do tend to rather squeeze things in. Yeah, Councillor Barlow.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think, listening to the questions we've had, that everyone loves this plan. I don't think that the officers love the plan. However, we are where we are. We've got to get our housing allocation up. The thought of not putting enough houses on these sites just means we've got to go further out into the green somewhere else. If you do look to the south, southeast, whatever of this, there are other more modern estates. And as it's been pointed out, I think the older sites are like in most towns, big gardens, plenty of land, not a worry. Nowadays, we're trying to protect the environment, etc. I will reluctantly support this. However, I would like to, I think we are giving, West Hill is a very prime area, and we are giving the ability for a developer to build houses in this area. And I think that we should be pushing for such things as solar on the roof. I don't care whether it's not a strategy. We have declared an emergency as a district council, and I think we need to start taking that seriously. So I think we should be doing that. The same with, I know it's a small thing, but not just in section 18 that there is a thing for B in bat boxes. They should be insisted for the cost of 45 quid for a B and a bat box on every, and a Swift box on every single house, or at least 2 of them on every house. And I think it should just be, you know, our rule that we do it with any house that we pass. Doesn't matter what it is. We need to do things that are above and beyond. And we have the power to do that here. And that would be a condition that I would like to see put on it. Yes, but I will obviously listen to others before, but I am ready when you are to make a recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we can ensure that condition goes in, can we, Gareth? Perhaps in consultation with the ecologist and with
Yeah, I'd probably suggest amending condition 18, which we touched upon earlier, which talks a lot about the requirements in terms of ecology. So we could be a bit more onerous on that account if it would satisfy you.
And what about solar panels? I mean, it's something I would like to see, but I think that probably is one we need to put in the strategic plan, which I think at the moment actually resists doing that. I think I have been told that building regs often lead to solar panels being put on because there's a requirement on energy generation. Is that right?
I think with building regs, obviously the standards of building regs are constantly sort of increasing. I think a lot of it is dealt with by Fabric First nowadays. I think that's how most builders seek to meet those by, you know, very good insulation effectively to reduce energy requirements. But as I said, the officer view is that there is no, you know, direct policy justification for it. But if members felt that it tipped the balance in favour of the development, then a condition could be applied requiring solar panels to be provided on. And members need to decide whether they want that to be a proportion of dwellings or all dwellings. I think it may be challenging to, for example, have solar on affordable dwellings.
Okay. Yeah, I would query that myself. I think a few thousand for some solar panels. If you're going to have affordable housing, you might as well make it affordable to run as well, mightn't you? And quite a lot of their houses are not north-south orientated, are they? Quite hard to tell from the layout there.
Yeah, most of them are east-west slopes. You can see the ridge, kind of see the ridge line on that drawing, although yeah, it is hard to see. The properties on the north there, they are north-south ridge lines. The affordable housing and the bungalows you've got. And also to the east, just above your attenuation pond.
Right, so we might have to specify on every suitable roof, depending on its orientation.
I think previously, Chair, on arguments in the strategic planning, it may be that we don't actually insist on the fitted, but we insist that they are adapted to fit. So in other words, it's literally a matter of putting them on. The plugs are there for them to plug into, the almost the mounts on the roof. In other words, the roof is suitable for it, prepared for it. That needs a little bit of thought. I'm sorry I brought this up without doing it, but I just think that we're giving something now that, you know, is pushing the boundaries of being acceptable, and these are the sorts of things where we can insist on things because it makes it acceptable.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you on solar panels. I have them myself, but I'm lucky I've got a south-facing roof. Okay, Councillor Jenny Brown.
Right, thank you. Okay, so looking at this, taking this in context today, with our current plan we've got today and not what's going on with government or the new emerging plan, I would not be in favour of this because you've got the vision for the village has been ignored, West Hills neighbourhood plan. It is overdevelopment for this area. It does not fit in, and there's other things as well. So I actually would not be in favour of that today, here and now.
Okay, thank you. Any other members wishing to speak? Councillor Haggerty.
Thank you, Chair. I think, I'll get the words right in a second because they're coming out. I actually like the application. I think there's things that I've listened to all the questions. The thing I like about the South West Water are going to address the Fluxton Mill before anybody lives there. With the school coming under, if they have to apply for SIL funding, there's going to be lots of different things for the people moving into West Hill. I think whoever gets the chance of moving into West Hill will be very, very lucky. It's a very nice area. I personally would be in favour of this one, and I'd be happy when ready to come back to make a proposal.
Okay, thank you. Any other members wishing to speak at the moment? Oh, Councillor Hall. Sorry, Matt, nearly missed you. Ooh,
Nearly had it. Thank you, Chair. I think it's always difficult when you're in a scenario where we have a current plan and we know what's coming up. You're somewhat caught between the devil and the deep blue sea. I really, I know West Hill very well. I feel that it has a very defined and set character. It has a very defined and set community. And I think personally that it can take some development. But the development must, in my opinion, be in line with that set character, to acknowledge it, and for it to be more than just acknowledging materials. I have a real concern that villages such as West Hill, if you keep adding and you keep adding and you keep adding, the cumulative effect on infrastructure provision or lack of provision. I struggle with the design as I see it. I had a quick go with a pen and paper last night. As some of you know, I am qualified in doing this type of stuff, and I can't help but think that 25 homes as originally set by the Strategic Planning Committee would actually provide a site that A, flows a bit better, B, shouldn't need any form of private roadway, that would hopefully provide a open space area that is properly usable rather than a postage stamp. I really do agree with Councillor Barlow with regards to things such as bird and bat boxes. You know, that should be instantaneous really, and should be a simple condition. And I don't see why in this day and age we shouldn't be insisting on things like solar panels where we can. So I feel, as the current design is today, with the number and layout that it is, it's not one that I can support today. It's not a question that I don't support something on this site, but I just feel today that this isn't appropriate for this site, and I don't feel that it's appropriate for West Hill. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Any other members? Okay, would somebody like to make a proposal? Councillor Haggerty.
I'd like to make a proposal to approve, subject to the S106 and appropriate assessment.
Okay, thank you. We got a seconder for that? Councillor Barlow.
Subject to the proposer happy to put on about bird and bat boxes and Are we allowed to push for solar on that? Is that recommended by officers? I know it's not recommended because I won't be there, but is it possible? There you go.
Okay. I'll just check that before we go to a vote because I think it is important. I think we've agreed we can do the bird bat boxes, swift bricks, etc. I don't know about solar panels. Can we ensure that those are provided at least on those houses that are deemed? Well, if we, yeah, well, I would say every available suitable roof, even if those houses have a slight premium to them. I think if I had a choice between a house with panels on it and one without, I'd go for the one with the panels every time.
It is challenging with I mean, I'm just looking through the emerging local plan policies, and there isn't one that is specifically saying you have to put solar panels on houses. The policy that I can see is Strategic Policy 28, Net Zero Carbon Development, where it comments that homes will be required to be future-proofed. So, you know, development need to deliver net zero carbon emissions. They need to submit carbon statements, but that would all be sort of coming in at the beginning of the planning process. Also be requirements to maximise opportunities for renewable energy and to ensure that in-use energy performance is as close as possible to design intent. So it would be difficult to say that solar is necessarily the best option of trying to improve, to move towards a net carbon, particularly when we've got a lot of east-west facing roof slopes. There may be other measures which might be able to improve the energy efficiency that are not necessarily solar, for example, use of air source heat pumps or something similar. I mean, again, we'd need to be a clear reason as to why, but if members felt that because this is not an allocated site and it therefore needs to be sort of demonstrating significant benefits to outweigh to justify it as a departure from the development plan, which is effectively what it is. It could be, you could apply a condition that requires the development. So effectively, I would suggest it would be a condition that would be that, you know, prior to development continuing above slab level, a statement demonstrating how opportunities to maximise opportunities for renewable energy is submitted to and approved, and any of the measures then implemented, which would allow the developer to, which would require the developer to address the issue and to look at what they could do to go sort of above and beyond the normal building control standards, without being rigidly saying that it needs to be solar that is provided on the site.
So could we just say a percentage above building control standards, rather than trying to leave it as a fluffy amount that might be something they can do? Because I understand that at the moment, if they put solar on, that means they can get away with less insulation, which is not what we're intending to do here. So it's a matter of, can we just say it's got to be a percentage over building regulations to mitigate the fact that we are going into a green area that we shouldn't be building in?
The problem is knowing what that percentage is. I mean, I've just, I'm sorry, I'm just now aware that they are actually proposing to put air source heat pumps into the development, so that is adding a sort of you know, that's going towards the net. So it could be possible to put that as a planning condition to ensure that that is actually delivered, that the dwelling shall be heated using air source heat pumps. As that's something which I believe the developer would be willing to do. So that could be a commitment through a planning condition.
Yeah, okay, well, that's a start.
Yep. We have the developers here. Would it be appropriate to ask them?
Yes.
If somebody from the developers would be willing to answer, if you could come up to the microphone just so that we have it on public record. Thank you very much. This is unusual, but it seems like it's something.
No, thank you. I'm more than happy to answer the question. My name is Bill Richardson. I'm planning manager at Strongbox Homes. The entire development, including the affordable homes, will all have air source heat pumps anyway. We are not specifically proposing solar PV, but we can accept that as a condition.
Thank you very much. It's a good combination, that, because the PV can then power the air source heat pumps.
If they're willing to, Chair, I suggest we put it on there as long as the proposer is happy to accept that.
So with those two additional conditions or modified conditions, we have a proposal to approve, seconded, yeah, and you're happy with those conditions, Dale? Good. Yeah.
Can you just clarify that again, just exactly what those conditions are that are being added?
Yeah. So the two conditions that we're proposing are that there are bat, swift and bird boxes on all properties. And that I think we'd have to say all suitable properties have solar panels, because I think we might, some of them might go on, Anne.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, east-west facing roofs are very good at providing good solar production. We've had that in the past and it is really good. So it's only the north-facing only position would be not really appropriate.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, I'm lucky mine's south-facing, so I get the full benefit, but I can see east-west, if you split the panels 50%, especially sort of half on one side and half on the other, you get the best of both worlds, because, yeah, it takes a little while for mine to get the sun coming round onto them. So, okay, well, let's just go for solar panels on all of them. Okay, so just so members are clear what they're voting on, Wendy, Mrs. Ormsby, that Wendy, yeah. I thought, how's Wendy going to know? Okay, so if Mrs. Ormsby could just read out what the suggested conditions are, then we'll all be clear what we're voting on.
Okay, so it's proposed that we amend condition 18 to give specific reference to details of bat and bird boxes to be submitted to, agreed in writing by the local planning authority and installed on each dwelling prior to occupation. So it would be amendment of condition 18, and then a new condition requiring that prior to development continuing above slab level, details of solar panels to be sited on all suitable roof slopes shall be submitted to and agreed in writing, the local planning authority, and the agreed details shall be implemented prior to occupation of each dwelling and maintained and retained for the lifetime of the development.
And I think there was the air source heat pumps, just as a condition. They've been agreed, and I know the gentleman's agreed it, and not that we don't trust what anyone says, but if it's a condition, I presume they're happy with it anyway, so.
I presume the air source heat pumps are shown in the detailed plans, are they, Gareth? So since it has to be carried out in accordance with the plans, is that correct?
I think I'm not sure whether we actually have the details of them, so it may be relevant to just amend that condition to say details of solar panels and air source heat pumps, and roll it into one condition.
Okay. Yep. Just like make sure we're watertight. Okay. Okay, members, on that basis then, I think we're ready to proceed to a vote. Mr. Hunter?
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure if this is, oh yeah, it is set up, okay, thank you. All members, could you please raise your hands if you're in favour of that vote, please? Thank you. That's 3. 4. And all those against, please? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep. And any abstentions? 1. So that vote fails, Chair.
Okay, in that case, we need an alternative proposal, don't we? Councillor Brown or Councillor Faithful?
I propose we refuse.
Well, Councillor Brown?
I'll second that. Would if our microphone would work.
Oh, sorry.
I'll second that.
Okay. In that case, we have a proposal to... okay, reasons for refusal, thank you.
Overdevelopment, out of keeping with the community, the whatever the setting. What other reasons do we want?
Right, okay. D1, overdevelopment and design distinctiveness outside the built-up area boundary on greater agricultural land. It goes against West Hills' vision for the village. S7, development in countryside. F5B, sustainable development. EN5, wildlife habitats. TC2, accessibility of new development. TC7, adequacy of road network and site access.
I can hear Mr. Hunter saying don't throw in too many there. For instance, you said adequacy for the road network, there's no objection from highways.
Can we hear from Wendy Ormsby, please?
Yeah, let's hear from Mrs. Ormsby on what she thinks might be the best reasons from those.
So, sorry, that was very quick, Councillor Brown. So what I've got is overdevelopment of the site out of character with the area.
D1, yeah.
Yeah. Then you're saying the principle of development, it's outside the development boundary. So you're saying that the principle of developing this site for housing is unacceptable. It's outside the development boundary and it's in an unsustainable location.
So S7, and it's overdevelopment as well. D1, I think that comes under.
Well, that's a separate, we've already said overdevelopment as one reason.
Yeah.
So this would be a second reason for refusable. You'd be saying that it's because of it's outside the development boundary, it's not a suitable site. It's an unsustainable site for development and it's contrary to the strategic approach to housing location. That would be a second reason. So then you're talking about wildlife. Could you expand there, please, Councillor Brown?
And H2 to do with density.
Sorry, we're going back to what you mentioned wildlife.
Well, it's going to affect the wildlife, isn't it? Because it's at the moment, it's a green field with...
To a degree that would justify refusing the planning application.
Okay.
Bearing in mind there is no objection from the county, the district ecologist.
What about S7? It states that development shall only be permitted where it is in accordance with a specific local or neighbourhood plan policy. In addition to this, development shall need to ensure that it is not harmful to the countryside. This may be by virtue of visual harm, increase of traffic, pollution or other factors.
Yeah, so we've established that you think you're using S7. Are you suggesting there is a third reason for refusal based on wildlife, adverse impact on ecology and biodiversity?
No?
No.
Okay, what about 5B, sustainable development?
In regards to?
Sustainability is actually...
What aspect of sustainability?
Can't walk.
So it's not a sustainable location because there's no access to local facilities.
I hope you're helping me too.
Right, I'm just trying to establish initially what the grounds are and then I'll give you my comments on them, okay? So no access to local services. And then I had a fourth, you mentioned that you think that the road work road network is inadequate. Okay, so those are the 4 reasons that you're proposing. It's overdevelopment of the site out of character with the area, that it's outside the development boundary, so contrary to the council spatial strategy, and that it's an unsustainable location with no access to local facilities, which effectively comes into, I suppose it's broadly the same, but I think you'd probably split them out. So, and then fourthly, the road network is inadequate. Right, okay. So I'm commenting on those ones then, because, and I would stress what Mr. Hunter always says, that we need, so each reason for refusal needs to be, you need to be able to defend this at a planning appeal. Oh, because you, sorry, Councillor Brown, you did also mention agricultural land. So it's grade?
Grade 3. It says in the report.
Right. Okay, so I think it's important, I recognise that we do have to consider this in the context of the current local plan. However, we also need to bear in mind that this is very likely will be taken to appeal. That appeal will probably likely be heard, you know, depending on how it is. I doubt we'll be getting a decision for at least 6 months, possibly longer. That is the context that the inspector will be looking at this. Strategic Planning Committee have made a resolution that they think this is a sustainable site suitable for the principle of housing. So refusing this on the grounds that it's outside the development boundary and is not a sustainable location for development, I believe will be very challenging to defend, bearing in mind Strategic Planning Committee have currently resolved that this is a suitable, sustainable site for development. So I would advise against refusing it on those grounds. The issue of the road network, the Highway Authority do not object. There is no evidence to sustain a refusal of this application on the grounds of adverse impact on the road network or the highway network. I would strongly recommend not refusing it on those grounds. Agricultural land, yes, it is loss of BMV land. You know, on its own, unlikely that we'd refuse it on those grounds. As an add-in reason, I mean, it's a matter of fact. Yes, it is loss of best and most versatile land. I think if members, this is a full application where we're being asked to look at the details. I think if members feel that it is an overdevelopment of the site out of character with the area, then, and that is their view, that fact, you know, as I say, that's not the officer view for reasons that we've explained. I think that you know, it would be possible to put forward a case to defend that reason for refusal. I would strongly advise against using any of the other proposed reasons for refusal.
When this was first put forward as a call for site, it came forward with 25 houses, which would be more in keeping with the area. I'm saying this is overdevelopment of the site, and we have been told to look at it now. This is why I'm saying it's confusing when you're having stuff coming to planning and you've got stuff going to strategic planning. It just does not fit right with us as a committee having to make decisions. I just think that's wrong.
And I think in terms of the comment you've made about the number of houses, the density, considering it, I think that it is, you know, it is defendable in terms of looking for any liability of costs, awards, etc. The overdevelopment out of character with the area in terms of scale, design and layout, I think is defendable. It's the other reasons for refusal. The principle of development, the road, the sustainability of the site as a location, the road network aspect, and the agricultural land aspects are matters I don't think we would be successful at defending on appeal. I would recommend, if members are wanting to refuse it, that you just move forward with that one reason for refusal regarding overdevelopment out of character with the area.
D1.
Yes. Yes.
Councillor Chamberlain, did you want to add something?
I'm going to stay quiet for a moment.
Councillor Hall.
I was just wondering whether, taking on board Councillor Brown's comments and Mrs. Ormsby's comments, whether the objection should be done more along the lines of, due to layout density design, its impact on the character of the area, the proposals are considered overdevelopment of the site and therefore contrary to Strategy 1, Strategy 7, Policy D1 and H2, if that helps.
Okay. What's H2? I know what D1 is. Make you look it up now. Yeah, D1 is design and local distinctiveness.
So H2 is planning permission will not be granted on new residential development which provides for 15 dwellings or more or is situated on a site of 0.5 hectares of or larger unless it contains a mix of dwelling sizes or compromises predominantly or totally of smaller dwellings. However, where site characteristics, including respect of landscape, prominence, and character, clearly indicate an alternative scale is appropriate, there will be flexibility in scale.
Yeah. Gareth, you wanted to come in on?
Yeah, what I've just had a look at is, obviously we're talking about what happened at Strategic Planning Committee. It was back in September when the officer recommendation was to allocate. I was just reading the minutes and it looks like the number of dwellings was 36 as part of that allocation rather than 20 something. I just need to confirm that.
Okay. All right. So, however, you could still argue that it's overdevelopment on over dense development on the grounds that doesn't respect the local area. I think we are giving officers a tough one here, but if that's the decision of committee, Councillor Chamberlain.
Thank you, Chair. I've listened to lots of everybody with what they've said. We've looked at this site from a strategic allocation going forward. I know it's not in the plan that we're following at the moment, but it will be coming forward in the new plan. So we need to look at this sensibly. For West Hill, when I look at this site and this plan, I do believe that it is an overdevelopment, if you like, i.e. the numbers that are within this site, 34, here, I think is too many for this to fit in with the surrounding area. Do I think this site could be developed? Yes, I do think it can be developed. But at 34, I feel it is too much for West Hill in that area. So if the previous proposal to refuse would like to withdraw that, I would be putting forward a recommendation of deferral to have the consultation to see if we can adjust the numbers on the application slightly, because I feel that this site could come forward and could be correct in design and numbers, but I just don't feel that it is quite correct at the moment for the area that it is going into. I would rather do that than I would refuse the application and put the council at risk from appeal, and rather work with the developer to come to the correct balance with what we're looking at doing in the future with our local plan, new local plan and the allocation and the housing numbers that we need to create that right balance. So that would be my proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, well, at the moment, we have a proposal to refuse, which, do we have to take a vote on that, Damien, or can they? Or it could be withdrawn, and we go for deferral instead, yeah.
We do need to clarify what the allocation is that's gone forward.
I'm happy to withdraw, Chair.
I'm happy to withdraw a seconder and to go with the new proposal.
I'm happy to.
I'll second the new proposal.
Okay, so so refusal has been withdrawn.
And
we
now
have
I
a
put my
proposal
recommendation
to
of
defer.
to defer this application. Yes.
Okay, we're
For
just
further consultation with the applicant.
clarifying what actually came up at strategic planning and what the suggested allocation was, because I think we've all accepted the number of 25, and we're now querying whether that was in fact erroneous.
Yeah, so I was just looking at the
I'm not saying a
minutes, and the minutes
specific number
confirm
here, I'm
36.
saying it needs reducing from 34.
Sorry, got two people talking at once there. If we could just wait, Sarah.
So confirming the numbers is 36, which is recorded on the minutes from Strategic Planning Committee.
Okay, that obviously that's an estimate based on a sort of formula for density. We can still argue that given the local area and the characteristics of the village as a whole, it's overdevelopment of this particular site. So we now have a proposal for deferral to enable further discussions between the developers and officers, which would possibly result in a revised plan with a lower density or some way of respecting the local characteristics. Is that?
I think we'd need some understanding of what members actually have in mind. I mean, just to be clear, and I have to apologise actually that we didn't make it clearer earlier, that the decision, the allocation, decision to allocate by the strategic planning is on the basis of 36 dwellings. So that is what we are being asked to consider today. So if as planning committee you consider that that is the wrong approach, or that 36 dwellings, if they were 36 smaller dwellings, would obviously take up less space within the site. But I think what it isn't clear is what it is. I mean, we have a scheme before us. It is a full detailed planning application. Ordinarily, we'd be saying, you know, we just need to determine this application that's before us, unless there is a clear understanding of what it is that members think could change within this scheme, without a sort of wholesale redesign. That I think we need a bit more clarity in that regard.
I'm not sure. For me, the clarity is that I'd like to see the number of houses reduced slightly. I think it's too dense for that area in that size plot. I understand that the numbers at strategic planning were 36, we've got 34 here, but I'm looking at the design in front of me, which we're being asked to comment on today, and looking at the density of the houses around it and that, and for me, in my opinion, I think that number could be reduced slightly and we could come forward with a better design that would be more in keeping with the area. I'm not stating what number it is because that design and layout, when they change it around, could fit in better. So I can't be specific in that, but I think that by reducing it slightly, we could come forward with a plan that would be better keeping for West Hill. What I don't want to do is say, okay, fine, we're saying the allocation in strategic planning is 36. We're sat here with 34 today. Clearly the planning committee don't think that fits from what I'm understanding as in numbers. So if we refuse it as a committee, it then goes to appeal, we run the risk of the council having costs and then 34, 36 going in there anyway, if that's one. So the sensible approach from me, and I might be very wrong here, is for us to say, actually, we just need to work a little bit more with the developer on this application for this site to be laid out correctly for the area. That's where I am.
Okay, got a couple of people wishing to comment on that. Councillor Barlow?
Yeah, I think that's an ideal solution, as long as you accept that. What are we talking about? 10% less, 10% more. If you look at the front page of the thing, and just to the never eat shredded. So southeast, there is an application, a block of houses down there that I've just added it up, is more, and it looks about the same size, is more than what we're talking about. And if you look right next to the next one that we're about to put in, and the one next to that on the east of it, again, they're a little bit more higgledy-piggledy in there, but again, it just seems to be, I think that we're looking at that plan and it looks compact because there's an awful lot of roads and access in there. What are you going to say? If we take 10% off it, don't forget they're only supposed to have 20. Well, no, but they're only supposed to have 20% profit. You start taking off their houses, then
I think
knocks
I don't think we need to specify a percentage reduction. I think what we're doing is inviting the developers to negotiate with officers on what might be a more acceptable design and layout and numbers. Councillor Haggerty, did you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. We were asking for numbers a moment ago. I don't know if we're going to look at 25, 28. If we've got to say a number specifically to work with the developer. I mean, I don't know, are we allowed to talk to the developer on this while they're here today, so we know what's coming back now? Okay, fine.
I would suggest.
Matt?
I think the issue that's coming up, and quite well put by Councillor Chamberlain, is that we have, I think predominantly in this committee, we have an issue with the numbers of houses on this site, which is partly related to its layout as well. Now, we could sit here and argue until the cows come home about numbers, but until somebody comes forward with a different plan, it is very difficult to understand whether the density and layout issues have been addressed. It's a bit like when somebody rings me up at work and says, can I put an extension on the back of my house? Well, yeah, but what? What size? There's so many questions. Until we see it in front of us, it's difficult to say. We're just saying we would, I think, predominantly like to see less in terms of number, with the layout can make a difference to how the density looks. Those types of renegotiations as well could also allow pictorially for these dwellings to be shown to have the solar panels on. It also could give the opportunity for addressing the bird and the bat boxes. This is, I think, just for me, a very simple, please go back to the developer and look for ways of addressing the concerns that a large proportion of the committee are raising. Thank you.
Okay. In that case, we have a proposal for deferral, come back to a future committee, hopefully fairly soon. All those, over to you.
No, it's not.
Yeah, well, okay. All those in favour of deferral then? Those against? Oh, did you get the number there, Wendy?
I've got 8,
yeah. Those against? Abstentions? Does that add up?
No, it doesn't. It adds up to 11 and we've got 12 members.
Okay, if we could just take the 4 vote again.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Yeah. Now we're happy, the numbers add up.
Still have to, yeah, against.
Okay, so we're going to defer that one, hopefully not for too long. And thank you, members. I think we'll push straight on because it's 1:45. And we were going to deal with 3 applications before lunch, but one of them was a buffer one, so we knew that. But as we have people from West Hill here, I think it would be sensible to just hear the other one now as well. So if we can, I can't even remember what the number of this one is. I've totally lost my place, and quite possibly my marbles at the same time. Okay. So yes, this is 230727 MOUT. This is an outline application, land north of Eastfield, West Hill, adjoining the other one. Okay. Are you doing this one as well, Gareth? Yeah? Yeah. Okay, over to Mr. Stevenson when you're ready, please. Welcome, Councillor Chapman. Do you have any other declarations? I've already declared on behalf of the whole committee that we had a lobbying letter in regard to Greendale, but that, as far as I know, is the only one. Yeah, no other in. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is application 230727, major outline. It seeks planning consent for up to 30 dwellings with all matters reserved save for the access point. The offer, as we heard before, was 50% affordable. It concerns 2 main fields. Again, this site is outside of the built-up area boundary. And it's important to stress that this planning application has been heard by committee before, actually last October, so a year ago, and so already benefits from a resolution to approve. It's up for reconsideration now and today to address the balance to do with the housing supply and housing policy, as well as take on board the comments of South West Water and the foul water treatment plants, which we've also talked about today. So looking at the site, we have access point from here, here and here. To give a context for the development, we have tree preservation orders with trees to be retained along this belt here. You can see the overall character of West Hill, which again we've talked about, which talks about valuing verdant nature of the village and the mixture of densities that you've got around as well. We've already talked about. So it's important to stress that this is an outline application with layout a reserved matter. But this shows, in theory, illustrative plan of how the development could be accommodated. And it demonstrates a relatively low development, which is compatible with the existing development on Eastfield. You can see, although this is indicative, the green space spirals around the road to provide a sense of openness. This plan here shows the smaller field area with tree protection areas shown in yellow, and an illustrative site about how you could accommodate these dwellings within the site with the tree constraints. So this is a photo looking in the southeasterly direction of the smaller site. You can see the trees there to be retained in the background. Looking north along the smaller edge of the site. This is the existing access point of the main field, which would continue through. So come through here. This is looking east towards Perry's Garden at a lower level down here as the land slopes and falls away. This is the rear of Oak Tree Gardens from the site of the proposed access, which would go along here. And this shows the northern boundary with the protected tree belt, which is to be retained. So as per the report, there are no technical objections to this development from highways, flooding, ecology, biodiversity. It is recognised that there was some adverse landscape impact because there'd be an intrinsic change from agricultural to residential development, which would occur when you're building on a green field. But with the tree screening, this was considered to be a localised impact. It would also result in the loss of grade 3 BMV, most valuable land, which also counts against the weighs against the development. However, as per last time, the resolution is one of approval. So as before, we are applying a flat balance, and therefore the previous tilted balance, which was heard at last October's committee, is no longer in play because of where we are as a council with our 4-year land supply, and we have a suitably progressed emerging local plan. However, in order to adopt the emerging local plan going forward, we're going to need a 5-year supply. Again, it was selected and agreed to progress under the emerging local plan, which was also went to the same strategic planning committee as the site next door. KC Advice pointed towards the need to maintain a healthy housing supply, so it's going in that direction as well as what we talked about last time with the new government, and to once again reverse the previous changes to the MPPF that occurred in December, as we've seen with the written ministerial statement. So therefore, a recommendation is made of approval again, even though we are now applying a flat balance. It's important again to talk about the impact with South West Water, and the impact that the concern is that the local pumping stations at capacity not able to accommodate this or other developments. Same again as we heard on the previous development that we discussed. There is a statutory duty for South West Water to accommodate new development. South West Water need to investigate and undertake further network improvements, and they think and they consider that this can be done within the lifespan of this application, which would also see a reserve matters come forward should this be successful. Therefore, conditions 16 and 17 added to the proposed recommendation, which includes accommodation of a water conservation strategy. So therefore, as per the report, a recommendation of approval is made again. Thank you.
Point of order, Chair. If this has already got planning, why is it coming to us again?
It benefits from a resolution to approve, and that was subject to a 106. So although they made a resolution, the decision notice was never issued because we were still negotiating the 106. In between that, we obviously had the changes in December to the MPPF, and we had the changes to the South West Water. So to our mind, we needed to bring those issues back because the Balancing Act as changes needed to be taken into account. So that's why it's come back before you today.
Yeah, because we're no longer having to apply the tilt balance, I presume was the changes you were referring to. Okay. So we need to remember that the layout here is only indicative. So we have some speakers on this one. So for West Hill Parish Council, I think Councillor Poolman, you said you were speaking in regard to both sites on that occasion, were you?
Yes, Chair, thanks. I was speaking in regard to both sites, so the comments and concerns that I expressed previously apply equally to this site.
Okay, thank you. So we'll hear from the applicant, Simon Tofts.
Thank you. The application before you today is made in outline with all matters reserved apart from means of access. It proposes up to 30 dwellings, and any subsequent reserve matters applications would set out the detailed layout and design. Notwithstanding your decision on the adjacent site just now, this site needs to be considered on its own merits and shouldn't affect your judgment. The application, as we've heard, was previously considered by the committee in October last year and benefits from a resolution to approve the scheme. An agreed Section 106 agreement is in place and ready to sign should the committee reaffirm that resolution. In addition, the Strategic Planning Committee only last month resolved and reconfirmed for the site to be included in the emerging draft local plan. As a result, the acceptability of the site for residential development in principle has been confirmed. The site is well related to the existing settlement and is a logical rounding off with housing development on 3 sides. We've worked diligently with your officers prior to the submission of the application and during its determination. No objections have been raised from any of the statutory technical consultees in respect of landscape, ecology, highways or drainage, including from South West Water, who have confirmed there is sufficient capacity at Fluxton Treatment Works. In addition, there is no objection from the NHS Trust to the proposals, nor are there any objections from the Education Authority. The development is liable for sale, and part of that money will go towards education infrastructure. Some concerns have been raised from third parties about potential drainage issues, but the drainage would be designed with runoff rates much lower than greenfield rates and suitable attenuations to ensure no flooding occurs. The application offers a betterment to that which currently exists in the surrounding area. Compared to the site baseline, the site will deliver a bionet diversity gain of 18% for habitats and an uplift of 35% for hedgerow, both in excess of the statutory minimum 10% on-site requirement. As I just mentioned, the Section 106 has been agreed and is ready to sign and includes the provision of 50% affordable housing on site, as well as a commitment to provide a pedestrian footpath link to the adjacent site to the west. We've confirmed in writing acceptance of the conditions recommended before you today. I hope you can accept the recommendation of your officer and support this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we've now got another statement from Councillor Bailey.
It's a short one, this one. I continue to object to this application on the basis that the site is outside the built-up area boundary. The reasons set out in my objection to the Windmill Lane application also apply here. I am also unhappy with the condition which relates to sewage, condition 17. For all the reasons I've set out in my objection to the Windmill Lane, this condition needs to be drafted in the most robust terms to prevent harm arising from the development. That's it.
Well, you called me out this time. Okay. Right. Committee questions? Councillor Barlow.
Just one question. Could you, I can't find the actual size of the site, this site, please.
Okay, while Gareth's looking for that, Councillor Faithful.
Yes, can I just get clarification on the smaller part of the site? How many houses is supposed to be going in there? And secondly, what's the access to the main site goes through over what looks to be tree roots of a oak tree. Is there protection for the oak trees as it goes through the hedge? Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I'll get officers to come back on that one in a minute. Yeah, Councillor Jenny Brown.
Can I just ask in future that when the planning applications come forward, where it says proposal and what it's for, can you actually give the size of the site there as well, so we don't have to hunt for it? Yeah?
Yep, I think that's a reasonable point. But the sort of density in this case is only indicative. So we're not voting on that today, just the principle of development and the principle of access. Did you have your hand up, Matt? Yeah, Councillor Hall.
I just wanted to know from officers if there is any reason why we couldn't change condition 14 for their requirement of 5 years to 10 years.
Okay, any further questions before I ask officers to respond? Okay.
So the, the illustrative plan, which is only illustrative, shows 8 houses on the smaller parcel, but that could change at reserve matters stage.
There's something about root protection for the
In terms of site area, the application form says 1.61 hectares.
Okay, that's the two parcels together, is it? Yeah, yeah. Okay. And the access road in terms of tree protection?
Regarding trees, you'll note on the picture, which, sorry, the photograph, which shows kind of a gravelly unconsolidated material. This is canopy of the oak. Down here, there was no objection from the tree officer last year, subject to planning conditions. So once again, if the tree officer was satisfied, and I'm sure that it'd want to make sure there was no harm to, you know, a specimen such as an oak. I don't think we've got any reason to go against that.
Okay, what's another question?
This was Councillor Faithful still looking puzzled. It's an existing field gate. There's already an opening. So whilst you might be seeing it, we're seeing it above with the canopies. I think the trees are actually, I know you're talking about root protection area, but the scheme has been assessed by our tree. You can see better there. That's where the access will be going through on the plans there. And the council's arboriculturist will have assessed these and has raised no concern in that regard. But obviously there is the usual condition here requiring tree protection within those, tree protection scheme to be agreed and implemented prior to commencement of development to make sure there is no harm to any of those protected and significant trees.
My concern is that basically, I mean, in the description, it's saying loose gravel put down. So road construction is something else altogether, where you dig out subsoil and compaction. You know, there's a whole load of stuff. What we see is just the asphalt on top, but there's a whole lot of work goes down quite a long way down. And that surely is going to be disturbing the tree roots when you're going down that sort of depth.
Well, we've got a tree protection plan, which is done by an arboriculturist, which looks at that tree in relation to that excess and was considered acceptable. Those findings were ratified by our own arboriculturist. Condition 8 imposes the need for a protection plan and a method statement to be imposed, and subject to that, there was no objection.
I think if you look at the bottom of page 85, it says the amended plans, this is from the tree officer, show that my initial concerns have been taken on board and the layout of the site around T1 and tree protective fencing concerning T5 and T8 have been adjusted accordingly. So I think there's been some mitigation there which has satisfied the tree officer.
My question?
Yeah, Councillor Hall.
Can I have an answer about my question 14?
the standard condition is 5 years. That's what we would generally put. I have seen, particularly when you're looking at strategic landscaping around big sites, that does sometimes change to 10 years. So yes, in principle it could, but I think we'd probably be looking for the justification as to why in this particular case we're saying 10 years rather than 5.
Okay, any further questions? Councillor Ann Hall.
Thank you, Chair. This is going to be using the planting as a screening, isn't it, for this site? Some of it. And as we know, we've got some very wet areas in there. We have climate change. I think putting a 10-year on it would be beneficial for the area because it actually upholds the nature of the area. As we've said, it's a woodland situation. So doing that would give it the benefit, and also diseases are coming in. We may have problems with other trees coming down foul of other diseases. So it needs to be in there, I think, to maintain a new canopy coming up through and screening.
Okay, can we do that? Can we change that from 5 to 10?
Yes, that can be done if
Yeah.
members feel it's necessary.
Righto. Okay, committee, if we've got no further questions, we'll go into debate. Councillor Barlow.
Thank you, Chair. Again, we've already passed this once. Nothing's really changed. You've come back to us. I know we've got this slightly less of the tilted balance. However, we've still got to get to 5 years. And I just don't see any point in getting. So I'd like to make a thing with the condition that because this is a forest, a woodland village, that it is important, and that does, I think, give extra weight to this for the trees to be put in there for it to be 10 years, 14, that we would accept officers' recommendations on this.
Okay, thank you. I think Councillor Barlow wants his lunch. Do we have a seconder? Yes, Councillor Hall.
I'm happy to second the proposal, and it is a logical way of moving on from that site onto that. So, yeah, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Chamberlain.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just think to stay consistent with what I said before, taking this application on its own merit is just to be just that when the reserved matters application comes in, obviously this says up to 30, just design for in keeping with the existing area would be great. Just mentioning that, no other comment needed. Thank you.
I think as the developer is here, they'll be following the debate on the previous one with great interest. Although I have to say, personally, I do like the layout of this one better. It does seem to have a more open feel to it, and there's a nice bit of green space in the middle there, which I do rather like.
It would be very unfair of me to make that comment on the last one or not this one, as they are right next to each other. So I just felt that I needed to say that. Thank you, Chair.
It's only outline, Chair, and the houses are a lot smaller on
Yeah,
this one.
absolutely. And we shall see. But as an indicative layout, I quite like it. So maybe when it comes back at the reserved matters stage, we shall see if that's been adhered to or something similar. Okay, do we have any further contributions from members? Everybody happy to go to a vote then? Yeah. Okay.
Just to confirm, we need to include the appropriate assessment as well.
Oh, yes. So we have, indeed, we have 2 recommendations here to adopt the appropriate assessment and to approve with conditions subject to the completion of an S106, which I think is almost complete, and the conditions as modified with that change on condition 14 from 5 years to 10, the justification being the nature of the woodland village and the importance of the screening and tree protection there. Okay, in that case, I'll go over to Mr. Oh, he says you do it. Okay, all in favour then? That looks unanimous to me, Wendy. I'll just double check. Any against? No? Any abstentions? No? Oh, yeah. Well, oh, okay. Okay. Well, that's okay. You've missed part of the debate, so you wouldn't have been able to vote anyway. So that one is carried. And in that case, we can now break for lunch. Thank you, members.